Shania Twain sold over 100 million records and became the best-selling female artist in country music history. But in 2008, something happened that silenced her for years. It started with a single tick bite during a horseback ride. Doctors missed it for 7 years. By the time they figured it out, the damage was already done. Her vocal cords would never work the same way again. She had to stay awake during surgery while a doctor adjusted implants inside her throat. And the worst part? This was happening while her 14-year marriage was falling apart in the most humiliating way possible. Everything begins with the way her name felt on her tongue when she was still a child, because she was born Eileen Regina Edwards on August 28, 1965, in Windsor, Ontario. And every part of that name carried pieces of a life she would one day try to outrun. Her mother, Sharon, held her close. Her father, Clarence, drifted further away each year, and by the time Eileen could form full sentences, the household was already cracking. The name Shania would not reach her until 1990, when she needed something strong enough to pull her away from the memories she no longer wished to carry. She chose it as a kind of shield, something that promised motion and escape. It was more than a name change. It was a quiet break from everything that hurt her before she was old enough to choose any of it. That hurt began early, because Clarence Edwards walked out in 1967 when she was only 2, leaving Sharon alone with 3 daughters and very little support. Sharon remarried soon after, and when Eileen was 4, Jerry Twain adopted her and her sisters Jill and Carrie Ann and gave them his last name. At first it looked like the family might settle, but the man who changed their names also changed the way their days unfolded. The home grew louder. Tension crawled into every corner. The family expanded again when Mark was born, and when Jerry's young nephew Daryl was brought into the house after his mother died. Eileen learned to call Jerry her father, even as fear pooled in her stomach, because family meant staying together, and that was the only rule she understood. Life in Timmins, about 500 miles north of Toronto, pushed that rule even further. Poverty wrapped around the family like winter frost that refused to melt. Food was scarce enough that Eileen learned to chop wood before she learned to apply makeup. She walked long miles alone through the cold, hunted small animals when the cupboards were empty, and kept her hands busy so her stomach would forget it was hungry. Timmins was a rugged mining town with few chances for people like Sharon and Jerry, which meant the house often felt like a battle for heat and survival. School authorities never heard a word from Eileen about what was happening at home, because she knew their help might break the family apart, and she couldn't allow that. Sharon struggled too. Depression weighed on her like wet snow, and raising 5 children inside poverty and violence made every day heavier. The house became a place where responsibilities shifted unnaturally, turning young Eileen into a caretaker before she reached her teens. She cooked, soothed children, cleaned, and tried to steady the house while fearing the moments when Jerry's violence erupted again. One night she watched him beat Sharon so brutally that when he plunged her mother's head into a toilet, Eileen was sure she was watching her die. Sharon went limp, silent, and still. That image never left her. It settled inside her and shaped every way she understood danger, love, and womanhood. The terror eventually grew so large that in 1979, when she was only 14, she convinced her mother to take all the children and flee 420 miles south to a Toronto shelter. They slipped away while Jerry was at work. The move felt like breathing for the first time, but the relief did not last. 2 years later, in 1981, Sharon returned to Jerry, believing there was no other option. Eileen followed her back to Timmins, and soon after, at only 8 years old, she began singing in bars from midnight to 1 a.m. to keep the family afloat. She earned $20 a night. Sharon would wake her at 2 or 3 in the morning so they could drive to smoky lounges where drunk men slumped in their seats. A metal screen sometimes stood between her and the crowd, and even that did not make her feel safe. She learned early that the world could be dangerous, but she also learned that her voice could pay bills. Music became her refuge. By 10, she was writing her own songs. She practiced guitar at night, chopped wood at dawn, and slipped into melodies to escape the violence at home. Her mother did everything she could to get her to lessons, even when they could barely buy food. The songs she wrote kept her sane. They gave her a place to go when she felt powerless. They let her imagine a life where she did not have to fear what waited behind her front door. At 13, she appeared on the CBC's Tommy Hunter show, smiling for the cameras as if she hadn't spent her morning wiping tears from her face. That same year, she joined a top 40 band called Long Shot, performing 5 nights a week while still attending high school and working part-time at McDonald's. She led a double life without letting anyone see the cracks. She kept her home life locked tightly away, hoping no one would ask questions she wasn't ready to answer. After graduation, she worked in Jerry's reforestation business with about 75 Ojibwe and Cree workers. She carried heavy bags of saplings, trekked through thick forests, and bathed in cold lakes because scents were not allowed. The wilderness gave her something nothing else did. It gave her silence. She sat with her dog and her guitar and turned loneliness into skill. Every tree she planted felt like a step toward the life she wanted. Then everything split apart in one night. On November 1st, 1987, Sharon and Jerry were killed when their car collided with a logging truck about 50 kilometers north of Wawa. The call reached 22-year-old Eileen in Toronto, where she had just finished a computer programming certificate as her backup plan. Grief froze her. She could not breathe. She could not understand how the world kept moving while hers collapsed. 3 siblings survived the crash. Carrie Ann was 18, Daryl was 14, and Mark was 13. They escaped with minor injuries, but lost their parents in the same instant. That survival carved a different kind of pain into them. Suddenly, they stood alone, and only Eileen was old enough to hold the family together. Within days, she returned to Timmins and faced choices she never wanted. If she walked away, the children would enter foster care. If she stayed, her dreams would pause indefinitely. She chose them. She gathered everyone and moved to Huntsville, where she found steady work at Deerhurst Resort. The job became her new anchor. She performed 6 nights a week in a Las Vegas-style show, then sang more sets in lounges, then worked daytime service jobs to fill the gaps. The pay was around $30,000 a year, enough for a small house, even though the plumbing failed and the well ran dry. They bathed in the river sometimes, but they were together. They were safe. And that mattered more than anything. She stayed there from 1987 to 1992, shaping her voice in front of crowds, raising her siblings, and tucking away every song she wrote. Deerhurst was hard, but compared to the chaos she had lived through, it felt almost peaceful. She remembered those years fondly later, saying at least they were not starving. Her dreams waited quietly, patient and steady, just like she was. After the crash of 1987 turned Shania's whole world upside down, she stepped into a life that felt far older than her 22 years. Her parents were gone in a moment, and the 3 kids who used to look up to her as the big sister suddenly depended on her for everything. Carrie Ann needed direction. Mark was 13 and still figuring himself out. Daryl was 14 and carrying more pain than he ever let on. Shania took them all to Huntsville, and stepped onto the Deerhurst resort stage night after night, because that was the only steady income she could find. While she performed under bright lights, her mind stayed on grocery lists, unpaid bills, and what time she had to pick the kids up from school. Mark later said she was strict because she was scared, and that fear shaped every choice she made. She handled mortgages she barely understood and ran the house like a parent long before she ever felt ready. Those 6 years from 1987 to 1993 blended together as she sang in Vegas-style shows, wrote songs before sunrise, and tucked her brothers in after midnight. When her youngest sibling finally turned 18 in 1993, she was 27 and finally able to breathe long enough to imagine her own future. As soon as her household settled and the kids moved out on their own, she pulled together every handwritten lyric, every melody she had stored away, and created a demo tape. Her manager arranged a showcase for label executives, a moment she had been building toward without even realizing it during those exhausting Deerhurst years. Before stepping into that room, she made a choice that felt like shedding an old skin. She stopped being Aileen Regina Edwards and became Shania, a name with a sound that matched the direction she wanted her life to move. That showcase caught the attention of Mercury Nashville in 1992, and despite worries about launching a 27-year-old newcomer, they signed her. While waiting for her own album to take shape, the label used her voice as a hidden instrument behind other artists. She sang backing vocals on Jeff Chance's 1992 album and again on Sammy Kershaw's 1993 release, learning the studio process step by step while Mercury figured out what to do with her. Then, April 20th, 1993 arrived, and her debut album stepped into the world with a quiet thud. Shania Twain sold only 100,000 copies in total. The creative control she hoped for never came. She wrote only one song on the entire record, and everything else carried the fingerprints of producers Harold Shedd and Nora Wilson. The album reached number 67 on Billboard's Top Country Albums chart, but it didn't move hearts or shift airwaves or convince anyone she was the next big thing. Critics brushed past her, the label doubted her, and she could feel the ground slipping under her feet as Mercury debated dropping her before she truly began. The singles didn't help. What Made You Say that crept onto the charts at number 74 in March 1993 and crawled up only to number 55. Dance with the One That Brought You reached number 55 as well, and then faded. You Lay a Whole Lot of Love on Me didn't chart at all, not in the US and not in Europe when they tried again in 1994. She made television appearances, smiled through interviews, and held on to hope even as the numbers refused to move. The label saw a losing bet. Most of Nashville saw a career that was already over. But somewhere far from Nashville, Robert John Mutt Lang listened closely. He wasn't looking at sales or chart positions. He was listening for tone, phrasing, edges she didn't know she had. He had already shaped the sound of AC/DC, Def Leppard, Foreigner, Bryan Adams, The Cars, and Michael Bolton. When he heard her failed 1993 debut, he heard possibility. He reached out through a cold call that changed everything. They spoke for months before meeting in June 1993 at Fanfare, and from that moment, the music between them moved fast. By December 1993, only 6 months after seeing each other for the first time, they were married and living as a team in both life and sound. What began as a professional spark turned into a partnership that felt unstoppable. When they finally stepped into the studio for what would become The Woman in Me, there was a new kind of electricity behind her voice. The album came out on February 7, 1995, and grew faster than anyone expected. It went gold almost immediately. By the end of 1995, it had sold 4,000 copies, making it the top-selling country album of the year. In 1996, it passed Patsy Cline's Greatest Hits to become the best-selling album by a female country artist. That record held until Shania herself broke it again in 1999. By 1997, the album had reached diamond status with 10,000 units shipped, and by December 1st, 2000, it was certified 12x platinum in the US alone. Worldwide, The Woman in Me sold 20,000 copies. For someone the industry had almost thrown away, it felt like every doubt she had carried in silence was finally answered. Any Man of Mine lifted her even higher. On July 22, 1995, it hit #1 on Billboard's Hot Country Songs and stayed there for 2 straight weeks. It held the #1 spot on the country singles sales chart for 10 weeks. It marked the first time since Anne Murray in 1986 that a non-American female artist topped the U.S. country chart. It crossed over into pop effortlessly, reaching number 31 on the Billboard Hot 100 and number 13 in sales. Suddenly, Shania was not just a country artist. She was a force moving between genres with a confidence nobody could ignore. By the 1996 Grammy Awards, the industry finally understood what was happening. The Woman in Me earned 4 nominations, and Shania stood on stage holding the Grammy for Best Country Album. Just 3 years earlier, she had been the singer Mercury nearly abandoned. That night, she was the future of the genre. When Come On Over arrived on November 4, 1997, the world felt the shift immediately. It debuted at number 2 on the Billboard 200 with 172,000 first-week sales and hit double platinum by early December with 2,000 units sold. The momentum didn't slow. On April 7, 1999, it was certified diamond with 10,000 copies sold, making Shania the first female country artist to earn 2 diamond albums. Eventually, the album reached 20x platinum in the US, and global sales passed 40,000 copies. It became the best-selling country album of all time and the best-selling studio album by any female artist in history. 12 singles poured out of the album, including You're Still the One, Man, I Feel Like a Woman, and that Don't Impress Me Much. You're Still the One alone spent 42 weeks on the Billboard Hot 100, peaked at number 2, and sold 2,000 copies. Even the songs that didn't hit number 1 on country radio became worldwide anthems, topping charts across Europe, Australia, and New Zealand. By this point, chart positions were no longer the measure of her reach. The songs lived far beyond that. By 1999 and 2000, she had collected 4 more Grammys, bringing her total to 5 out of 18 nominations. The Recording Academy could not ignore the impact anymore. She had reshaped a genre while staying exactly who she was, the girl who had once held a family together at 22 and sang her way through fear, because that was the only way forward. On January 26, 2003, Shania Twain stepped into a moment that felt larger than life as she walked onto the Super Bowl XXX stage in San Diego. The stadium lights hit her with the same force as the roar of the crowd, and nearly 88,000 people watched from around the world as she launched into Man, I Feel Like a Woman. And up. She shared the night with no doubt and sting, yet for a few minutes the whole show seemed to pull itself around her. She later said the feeling was almost unreal, like she was moving through a tunnel where everything rushed by too fast to hold on to. It was the height of everything she had built over the years, and it arrived just a few months after the release of her 4th studio album, while she was still learning how to balance fame with being a new mother. In November 2002, only weeks before the Super Bowl announcement, Shania released Up, and it shot straight to number 1 on the Billboard 200 with 874,000 copies sold in the first week. It was a thunderous return after taking 5 years away from recording to raise her son Ija, born on August 12, 2001. The album carried 3 different versions, each one crafted for a specific audience. The green disc offered country and acoustic sounds, the red disc explored pop and rock, and the blue disc embraced international influences with rhythms inspired by Indian cinema. The RIAA counted all 3 versions together, awarding the project an 11 times platinum certification in the US, equal to 500,000 units. Shania explained in a 2002 interview that motherhood had shifted everything inside her, saying her son became the focus of every single day and filled her life with newfound warmth. Then, a moment out in nature changed all of it. During her up tour that began on September 25, 2003, she went horseback riding and was bitten by a tick. It seemed harmless at first, just another outdoor inconvenience, but inside her body, the bacteria Borrelia burgdorferi began its quiet attack. The symptoms crept in with dizziness and pressure in her head, and soon she was blacking out every 30 seconds to 1 minute on stage. She described feeling as if the ground might vanish under her feet, while thousands of fans stared up at her. Doctors misread the symptoms and blamed stress or exhaustion, so she pushed on. It took 7 years before specialists realized the bite had caused Lyme disease that damaged the nerves controlling her vocal cords. The condition developed into dysphonia, leaving her unable to rely on the muscles that once gave her voice so much power. Speaking became strained. Singing felt impossible. Her voice no longer responded to her the way it once had. By summer 2008, her personal life collapsed. At the same time, her career was threatened. On May 15, 2008, after 15 years of marriage, Mutt Lange asked for a divorce. Shania had sensed something wrong, but never imagined the truth waiting behind it. Living in Switzerland with their 7-year-old son, she felt increasingly lonely, even while sharing a home with a man she believed she loved. She later said that the moment she realized she was lonely inside her own marriage, she knew something deep had fractured. The divorce news struck her while she was already battling years of illness, and a voice she feared she would never get back. The truth behind the separation came from an unexpected place. Frédéric Thiebaud, the husband of Marie-Anne, Shania's friend and personal assistant, reached out to her during Easter. They were not close, and he did not even have her phone number, but he found a way to contact her because he could no longer stay silent. He told her plainly that something was happening between Mutt and Marie-Anne. When Shania could not believe it, he offered proof. Hotel receipts, dates, patterns he had tracked for weeks. He explained that he had waited to see if they would come clean on their own, but they never did. The shock was deeper because Marie-Anne had been one of Shania's closest confidants. Their families traveled together. Holidays were shared. They worked side by side, and Shania trusted her with her personal worries. When she confronted Marie-Anne gently, hoping there might be some explanation, she was met with a chilling denial. Marie-Anne insisted she had nothing to hide and claimed she could not understand why Shania would think such things. In that moment, the betrayal tore apart both a 14-year marriage and a friendship Shania believed would last her entire life. During this period, she described herself as uncontrollably fragile. She told a podcast host years later that she had never known that level of emotional collapse. She believed she was safe for the first time in her life, and losing that sense of safety cut her deeper than anything before it. In her 2011 memoir, she wrote that for the first week after discovering the affair, she felt as if she might disappear inside her own grief. She could not imagine waking up or even acting rationally. At the same time, the damage from Lyme disease had already taken her voice. She was grieving both the loss of her marriage and the loss of the sound she once believed defined her. The divorce was finalized on June 9, 2010, in Switzerland. Mutt and Marie Anne stayed together afterward and still live near Shania and Frederick. Although Shania shares a 22-year-old son with Mutt, the two barely speak and communicate mostly through text messages. She explained in 2024 that they do not complicate anything because they love their son and keep all exchange simple. By then, she had already built a new life with Frederick, whom she married in January 2011. She has not spoken to Marie Anne since the day she confronted her. The love that grew from those ruins turned into one of the most surprising chapters of her life. On January 1, 2011, she married Frederick Thiebaud during a sunset ceremony in Puerto Rico, with just 40 people present. When the officiant announced they were married, Frederick lifted her off the ground and kissed her as if joy itself had taken over his body. Their guests cried, and music carried through the evening as everyone sang, "All You Need Is Love." They later settled in Corso, Switzerland, overlooking Lake Geneva, where Shania found the calm she had lost. But the struggle with her voice remained. After years of misdiagnosis, a neurologist finally identified in 2010 that the Lyme infection had damaged the nerves responsible for closing her vocal cords. The damage explained why she could not project or shout or even raise her voice above a crowd. It was not her vocal cords themselves, but the nerves behind them that had weakened. 7 years had slipped by without the proper treatment, and by the time the truth surfaced, the damage had become permanent. In 2018, she underwent laryngoplasty, a surgery so intensive she had to stay awake through it. The surgeon needed her conscious so she could speak and sing while he adjusted Gore-Tex implants to support her weakened vocal cords. She remembered the fear vividly, feeling every vibration while trying to help the doctor place the supports in exactly the right spot. The procedure left a horizontal scar on her neck, one she shows proudly now because it marks the moment she fought for her voice. Afterward, she spent months retraining herself, practicing in small rooms, bathrooms, and closets, while she rebuilt muscle memory from the ground up. Her voice changed completely. It became raspier and lighter, with a different texture than anything she had before. She found that singing required less effort than speaking, and sometimes her speaking voice gave out before a song did. She embraced the change with a strange sense of gratitude. The new voice had character, she said. It belonged to the woman who survived everything. She worked with vocal therapists for hours at a time to create new pathways for sound, rebuilding her technique without expecting the old voice to return. Even now, she knows the future is uncertain. Doctors have told her that the nerve damage is permanent and may worsen. She might need more surgeries. She might reach a point when long shows are no longer possible. She once told John Bon Jovi, who had the same surgeon in June 2022, that while she can still sing, she cannot handle 2.5-hour shows several nights a week. She supports her voice with daily exercises and constant monitoring, accepting that every performance is part of her recovery. Still, she keeps returning to the stage. Her first Las Vegas residency began on December 1, 2012, and ran through December 13, 2014 with 105 shows. A second residency called Let's Go ran from 2019 to 2022 at Planet Hollywood. Her third, Come On Over, filled the 7,000-seat Backed Theater in 2024 and into February 2025 with 24 shows spread across the year. She explained that residencies let her control everything from lighting to sound, giving her a gentle environment where she can adjust night by night. The fans filled every seat, embracing her changed voice with the same love they had for the old one. And she is still not done. In 2026, at age 60, she continues touring and will open for Harry Styles with 6 Wembley Stadium shows on June 12th, 13, 17, 19, 20, and 23. When she announced it, she told fans she could not believe she was checking off such a dream this late in her life. She also serves as a judge on Season 4 of Canada's Got Talent, which began filming in fall 2024 and premiered in spring 2025. She shares the panel with Howie Mandel, Cardinal Offishall, and Catherine Ryan, with Lindsay L. hosting. She moves forward with a voice that is forever changed and a past that shaped her resilience. Every day she works to maintain the sound she fought to reclaim, and every stage she steps onto becomes another reminder that she is still here, singing with whatever strength remains.